Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fifth session of our Golden Thread series, Foundational Community Supports, ISP Intervention Development. We wanted to welcome you and thank you for being here. Today's webinar is hosted by DBHR through the Washington State Healthcare Authority. As you know, this is an interactive training, and we do encourage you to participate throughout. The slides, as well as a link to the recording of this webinar, will be sent by email after the conclusion of this presentation. We wanted to add a note about artificial intelligence. Please note that the use of automated note-taking bots or similar tools during any of our IEI or Washington FCS events or meetings requires prior approval. Unauthorized use of such tools is prohibited to ensure the privacy and confidentiality of all attendees. Also, any recording that is created through AI is not recognized as an official recording of this session. We reserve the right to exit trainees from the training if they're using AI to take notes without prior approval or using AI to record this session. Just some training basics, as you're all already familiar with. You can connect using your audio. Please do feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to contribute to some of our engaging conversations. And we do ask that you keep yourself muted if you are not speaking to keep down any background noise and prevent any distractions. If your video is on, please just make sure that you have an appropriate background and appearance. To ask or respond to any questions, feel free to, again, use the chat or unmute yourself if that feels comfortable for you. Again, this webinar is being recorded and the presentation will be sent out to you after the conclusion of this one. Before we get into some fun stuff, just again, our overview. We are in this fifth session, ISP Intervention Development. So we're getting close to the finish line. You've already covered some of the introductory and foundational elements, as well as the assessment process, some of the components of the ISP. Last week, you covered applying that SMART framework. And so this time we're talking about interventions and intervention development. Just a moment as I just swap my screens here. There we go. Okay. So again, we are in session 5. My name is Crystal Socia. I'm so excited to have you all here. I'm seeing many familiar names that we've had many of you throughout these sessions. Again, I'm one of the senior training and consultation specialists here at Rutgers, Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions within the Rutgers School of Health Professions. So again, just excited to be here. If you need anything throughout this presentation, please do feel free to, again, use the chat, or if you have any tech concerns, my colleague Emily Bands is here and you'll see her name in the chat. She is listed as a co-host, so feel free to message her directly. Appreciate all the welcomes this morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Before you begin, just checking in with how everyone's feeling today. I know I did this last time we were here on a scale of 1 to 10, or maybe throw in an emoji if you have access to emojis in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling today. What's going on for you? Ooh, I see it. Hibiscus. Feeling good, seeing some smiley faces. Let us know how you're feeling this morning. Blessed, love that. Sleepy, maybe. Love this. Grateful to be here. Oh my gosh, sick. No. Good morning, feeling grateful. Loving the emojis. It's a rainy day over here in New Jersey. Not sure what the weather's like out in Washington, but good morning and welcome. Some sleepy faces. Thank you all for being here. Overcast. hoping for some sunshine soon, but maybe you enjoy the overcast. So again, thank you for being here. Thanks for letting us know how you're feeling. Feel free to do what you need throughout this presentation. If you need some extra caffeine to keep you up, I encourage you to do that. And again, thank you for participating in the chat. We're going to start with a review from, oh, thank you for the full forecast. We're going to start with a review of session 4. And so we're going to start with a mini pop quiz, but not so much a pop quiz, just testing your memory recall. So we talked about SMART framework for ISP, goals and objectives. Does anyone remember what SMART framework stands for? Ooh, Darcy, I love those emojis. What does SMART framework stand for? So the brain is crushing it. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound. Right on the money. Sometimes you'll see instead of attainable, you might hear achievable. Instead of relevant, you might hear realistic. Jennifer, perfect. Yes. Yep. So you might, again, see different variations, but this framework is really important when we're thinking about goal development and creating goals that are really meant for the person that you're working with. Not something that you think is in their best interest, but rather something that they have voiced to you. Maybe you've collaborated with them and have come up with this kind of mutual decision of what they would like to do and how they would like to move forward. So excellent. Yes. Yes, sometimes repeatable, many different variations. So checking with you all before that question, were you able to practice using the SMART framework since the last time? If you maybe haven't already done so, let us know yes or no in the chat if you did practice using the SMART framework. Yes, seen a couple yeses, not yet. If not, no worries. It's only been a week since we last saw you. Still in training, that's okay. So soon you will be using some of these things and really supporting the goal development. Yes, absolutely, in goal setting. Still in training, that's okay. Oh, Okoye says, I did, but not with work. It was in my role as a nonprofit board member as we were addressing our goals for the community. Incredible. And that's such a great point that this is not only applicable to maybe your current role, but it's so applicable to personal goals, goals in other professional areas, in other realms of life. Just really sets you up for success to be able to do and really align with something that makes most sense and is really broken down into smaller components. Starting to slowly incorporate. Great. Not yet. No worries. Okay. And so it's important to consider some of these pieces. So how do you know a goal or objective is SMART? Maybe asking yourself some of these questions. Was it specific about what will change? Was there a way to measure progress or achievement? Was it attainable or relevant for that individual? Sometimes, again, we talked about stages of change, and we might be one step ahead of this person. So making sure that this is attainable and relevant for this person, not for us. Was it time bound? Was there an end date? How will you know that this person was able to make this change? What will that look like for them? So really breaking down those elements. I already asked this question, so I'm glad that some of us have already tried using this format. Some of us might still be in training. Some of us might be using it in the future, so no worries. It will come up at some point. For this session, we are going to talk about types of FCS interventions. We're also going to identify and apply some of those methods of FCS interventions and using specific evidence-based practices, and that will include some of the following. So motivational enhancements, really driven by motivational interviewing techniques, cognitive behavioral techniques, so ways to support and challenge restructuring thought patterns, illness management recovery, which is a really wonderful toolkit that has so many pieces, and we'll get into that as well. And a lot of the work that we're doing is skills teaching. So we are teaching the skills that are necessary to be able to support someone's recovery, improve their quality of life, and successfully reintegrate into the community. And so when we look at, again, the golden thread of FCS, we are really in this section here right in the middle that is filled in with this yellow box. So we have already developed that individualized service plan. And now what we're going to do is provide some of those intentional services. So we want to determine what are those interventions that really align with this person's larger goal, and how do we get there? And so we'll share that throughout much of this presentation. We'll talk about maybe questions to ask yourself when developing those interventions. And so stay tuned for more on that. We wanted to highlight again this slide that looks probably quite familiar for many of us. And so when we look at the goal, objective, and intervention, we are talking about the goal as this larger goal that this person wants to achieve. So you're almost funneling down this process. Goal is the umbrella kind of thing that this person is trying to achieve or meet. Objective is a step towards that goal. And we talked about using those knowledge, skills, and resources, specifically through the use of that form, to help identify some of those objectives. And then the intervention is what you all as staff will do to support this person in achieving those objectives and larger goals. So sometimes there's so many helpful questions to ask yourself when writing interventions. And so we like to start off with, how will the intervention support this client's goal or objective? And this might be asked through some additional questions. So what information needs to be shared? What skills need to be taught or practiced? And what resources need to be acquired? So, let's say someone is looking to independently go to their doctor's appointment in the community. And so maybe they have an awareness of where that doctor's office is. They know the time of that appointment, but maybe they need to know the bus route. They need to know the times the buses are running. They need to know what to do if that bus is not on time. Maybe they need to know the schedule. Maybe they need a reduced fare pass. Do they have access to that? Do they know how to I know it's like it can be so intimidating when you're in a new state or town, like how to pay for the bus or train. Where do you take a card? Do you insert money coins? So all of those things are so important. When we think about really writing these interventions, there's likely so many elements that come into play when really supporting that larger goal. And so sometimes we like to think about words that might be helpful too when really creating some of these interventions. So you might hear or use words like teach or train or educate. Maybe you're providing skills or feedback. What are some of the interventions that you all provide to support a client's goals and objectives? Feel free to share some of those types of interventions that you're providing. I know you're not doing nothing. What are some of those interventions that you provide? Maybe some of the most common ones when you think about supporting a person's goals. Here they come. All right. Providing relevant referrals, warm handoffs. That's so important. Locations of available housing they could qualify for. Yeah, maybe supporting with housing search, budgeting, DV domestic violence education, completing housing applications, looking up websites, safety planning, financial navigation, resume help. Yeah, there's so much that we're doing throughout the day, and it really is so driven by skills, knowledge, resources. Maybe we're supporting someone in, new coping skills or strategies. We're teaching and modeling. We are, yes, resume building, interview techniques. And each person is so different. So we know that we might not necessarily be doing the same things throughout the day, but we are really tailoring these interventions to support this person's larger goals and objectives. Helping assist clients register for school, yeah. And it could be some of those micro skills that we, again, might take for granted and we might not realize require additional support. Yes, using motivational interviewing to elicit motivation, maybe exploring change talk or sustained talk. Continuous communication. There's so many different kinds of communication skills. I mean, think about what you might do on a daily basis. You might communicate with a coworker in the morning. You might communicate with your local barista at the coffee shop. You might have to make phone calls to a friend or family member. And so each of these interventions requires its own kind of skill too. Applying for replacement SS cards, yes. Appreciate these examples. And so sometimes there's a lot that is really needed to be able to make those appointments. And I jumped to this question again previously before getting to it, but there's so many different pieces and elements that come into play when we think about um, getting to an appointment on time by bus. Like I said, there's different micro skills that come into play, and so we need to know all of these different pieces. We need to know what the person you're working with is already aware of, what knowledge, skills, and resources they already have, and then we're adding the intervention that maybe they're not quite familiar with or need some additional support on. And so when we're looking at interventions, most interventions really should do some of the following. They should typically improve or restore functioning in a chosen environment. So this is important because we want to emphasize this functioning in an environment or a place that they're going to be practicing this skill. And Emily often shares this example. I don't think it's been used yet, but maybe it has been. So have you ever been to maybe a friend's house or a hotel and didn't know how to turn the shower on or turn the shower to hot? Yep. Yes. Big loud yes. Yes. Yeah. And so that happens for many of us. So if we're teaching a new skill, and let's say we're teaching the skill of, um, being able to, for us, we're trying to learn how to use this shower in this new environment. But if someone had taught us how to use that shower at home, it's not going to be the same exact steps as it is when we're going to a new place, friend's house, hotel, new environment. And so this could be the same, especially if you as a staff person are teaching a person how to cook. We know that there are so many different types of stoves, stovetops, appliances, different ways to cook. And so it can be really difficult if someone, let's say, has spent much of their time in a psychiatric hospital, or perhaps doesn't have the skill set of how to use a stove. And we're teaching how to use the stove in our staff office, but that stove in the staff office is different than the stove at their home. Maybe we have an electric stove and they have a gas stove. And so, there are perhaps experiences, and we've shared, if someone is teaching or learning on a gas stove versus an electric stove and it doesn't align with the stove that's in their chosen environment or their current place of living, it could be a risk for a small kitchen fire. And so we want to be mindful of if we're teaching an intervention, maybe it might be best, or really it will be best, if you teach that intervention or skill in the place that they're going to be actually practicing that skill. Right, safety such as making sure they turn it off. The amount of times that I have to double, triple check if I turned off the stove is more than you know. So yes, there's a skill of not only turning it on, knowing how long to, let's say we're boiling some pasta, how long do we have to boil water? Um, I my I should share a story. My dad had once he boils milk and then forgets about it that it's on the stove, and then the milk either boils over or evaporates. And so, yes, there's so many different things that could happen that really require some additional support. And again, in that environment. So, really, really just want to emphasize that. We also like to emphasize doing with over doing for. Why do you think that's important? Sometimes we might find it easy to just, do something for someone rather than this kind of collaborative process. Okay, exactly. Yes, we won't always be there. It's important people figure out how to do something themselves. Angela, encourage independence. Yeah, teaching independence and growth, empowering clients to do things on their own is important for them to feel independent. Self-advocacy, absolutely. So rather than going ahead and doing something for someone, maybe because we think it'll take less time, it's going to be easier, they won't have to worry about it, we're actually doing a disservice because we could be teaching them this new skill and increasing exactly what you all said, independence. Yes, Jennifer, confidence, the ability of like, wow, I actually was able to do this on my own, and I don't really need Crystal's help right now. Or I don't need this maybe staff person's help with this one, but I do need help with another thing. And so now we're really exploring, okay, we're emphasizing this part about independence over caretaking or doing for. And this might look like, if someone is working on a goal of, let's say, grocery shopping. I mean, there's so many different variations to do this. Instead of picking up groceries for someone, maybe you can support them in scheduling delivery, or you can support them in really some of those skills that it takes to maybe they can walk over to the grocery store, but maybe they have a lot of groceries, so it might not be feasible to walk home with several bags. I'm that person who takes out all the bags from my trunk in one shot, and that's just not feasible. It is not realistic to carry 12 different bags, let's say half a mile to your house. So being able to, again, prioritize this doing collaboratively rather than doing for. The last part is using teachable moments. So there's so many things that happen unexpectedly that could be teaching opportunities. This happens all the time wherever you go. Think about just a basic example of let's say you're going to get your morning coffee at your local coffee shop and there's a line out the door, but you're already running late for work. And so now it's learning the ability to be patient. But also, if you're out with someone in the community, with a participant or client, you want to be mindful of how we are modeling our behaviors, especially if it could be a learned opportunity for this person. We are constantly modeling any kind of behavior. Think about how long it might take to get a hold of the Social Security office over the phone. A lot of that is, practicing patience and emotion regulation or distress tolerance, the skills to navigate the discomfort. No one likes waiting on the phone for a long time. And so it can be a great opportunity for us to teach some of those things as well. What are some of the things that you all teach or model? And I'm probably getting ahead of myself because we'll talk about this later, but what are some of those skills that you all model that might just happen naturally? Seeing some examples. Give me just a moment. Just trying to get back to my screen again. Okay, I see some examples. Not sure how to define the skill, but had a peer that I went out into the community with to meet with employers. And initially, he wanted me to take the lead, but he quickly took over himself. And I was so happy to see that. Very cool. Yeah, I'm not sure how to define that either, but maybe it is some level of advocacy and independence. Like this person trusts their ability to be able to communicate effectively. They know you're there by their side if they need support. Budgeting, common courtesy, professional communication, emotion regulation, problem solving. Common courtesy, yeah, just the ways that we engage with people on a regular basis. Showing up and asking. Yeah, so all of these things that are so important and are absolutely teachable moments throughout just our regular day. Patience and listening. Being patient, such as when I'm on the phone, being productive, doing something else while waiting, looking for positives in each situation. Yeah. And so even when you think about this question, what is a teachable moment while taking public transit? It's all of those things. It's being able to be patient, being able to communicate, being able to call for help or support if needed, regulating those emotions. Love that. Walking shoulder to shoulder, sharing my own hope that they can too achieve their goals. Alma, love that. Talk less, listen double. Yeah, a lot of the work that we are doing is actively listening. It is so important to listen more than we talk and really gather and hear this person's story. So amazing. Okay. So we're going to talk about the types, the what, and the methods or the how when we think about interventions. So the types of skills training and resource acquisition really includes the following. So pre and post tenancy skills and resources also includes the job search as well as the sustaining. So helping someone choose, get, and keep jobs, activities of daily living skills and resources. And then again, some of those methods of acquiring those skills and resources include skill teaching, which is what we all do, motivational enhancement or motivational interviewing strategies, cognitive behavioral techniques, and illness management and recovery. And again, checking in with you all, have you all used any of these methods for supporting individuals of achieving their goals? Are you someone that maybe turns to skills teaching? Are you someone that does a lot of coping skills teaching? Do you do a lot of psychoeducation? Maybe you're someone who's really confident in using cognitive behavioral techniques, or you're very quick to turn to motivational enhancement. Which one works best for you? IMR and the wellness self-management, very cool. And thank you for sharing those resources. All of these, yeah, depending on what works, what this person needs, depends on the client's needs, absolutely. And so we'll talk a little bit more about these in detail in just a moment. Lots of skills teaching, yeah. Very much depends on the client's needs. Yeah, maybe communication with the landlord. That can be a really difficult conversation. And communication, again, is one of those things where you really need to tailor your approach to each person. Communicating with a landlord might look a little different than communicating with a friend or communicating with a family member. Maybe you need some more assertiveness skills, or maybe you might need additional skills to navigate the difficulties in regulating emotions. So again, just to quickly cover, Within your supported employment services, you have the pre-employment services, which include some of the following, and this might look familiar. And then you have those employment sustaining services. So what you need before the job, what you need to maintain the job. And so again, there's so many different skills that are required to achieve some of these things. And so just keeping that in mind, wanting to share this with you, again, this likely looks familiar, but again, there's so many different interventions that need to be either taught, modeled, provided with some education on so that this person can achieve their goals. Similarly with supportive housing, like we mentioned, the pre-tenancy and post-tenancy supportive housing services. So you have the things that happen prior and the things that happen after. So all of those things that you might need to support advocacy maybe before, as well as all the things that you might need to support this person in developing or increasing their skill set as far as activities of daily living. As you mentioned, again, we may not be here with this person forever. This person may transition into another independent living, maybe our staff and staffing changes. So this person really needs support in developing and increasing some of those skill sets to be able to ultimately live independently. And so we share this with you because, again, within those services, there are so many different methods to support someone in achieving their goals. And we'll go through each one of these in more detail. So when we're looking at motivational enhancement strategies, we will talk about what that looks like to support someone in moving from that sustained talk to change talk and being able to achieve their goals, cognitive behavioral techniques, IMR, and skills teaching. So just an overview, but let's get into what that really looks like. So is anyone familiar with motivational interviewing? Lots of yeses. Okay. Amazing. Not really, that's okay. Not really, no worries. Yes, it's a skill, so it's ongoing. Yes, it's something that you'll continue to learn and practice because each person you're going to work with has a different level of readiness to change. So what is motivation? When you think about the word motivation, what does that mean? Desire to get something done, the drive to see a goal completed. Yeah, absolutely. It could also be this, oh, cheer, watering the plant, enhance, action to complete a task. The push to get you going, positive push forward. Yeah, it's really almost this state of readiness to change, or the probability that a person will really enter into, continue, and maybe adhere to a specific change strategy. As we all know, being human beings, there are so many different things that contribute to our readiness to change. And so some of these enhancements really come from motivational interviewing and are very much client-centered to support someone in making a change. The first part of this is helping someone to explore and resolve their ambivalence about a change. And so that might look like this person may have some ambivalence about or uncertainty about making a change in their life. Ooh, I'm loving the examples too. The drive, the moving forward, stepping out of the thought and into the action. Yes. Yeah, we're no longer thinking about this change. We are actually doing this change. We are actually living and breathing this new change. And so think about, someone who is starting a new goal. We know ambivalence is so normal and part of this process. And the uncertainty about a change is normal. If you're someone who really loves change, more power to you. I know for me, I am quite uncomfortable with change, and that's so common for many individuals. I don't think maybe there is. I don't know the research behind this, but maybe there are people who love to wake up in the morning and say, I'm so excited to do this new change. But change can be so hard and uncomfortable. And so it's important to acknowledge some of a person's ambivalence and uncertainty and kind of roll with where they are at and support them side by side. I like the example someone had shared, kind of walking alongside with this person. We're not two steps ahead of this person, we're not two steps behind. We are really collaboratively working alongside with this person. And so change really happens by resolving some of that ambivalence in order to achieve lasting behavioral change. What are some of the things that we do to support someone's ambivalence or to kind of, again, work alongside with them to make a change? What are some of the things that you all do? Meet them where they're at. Absolutely. Focus on their strengths. Yeah. Ooh, I love the tulip emoji. Yes. We're working alongside them. I often say we're kind of the co-pilot in their journey. Ooh, using oars and validation. Yes. We're about to get to that one. Acknowledge what's important to them. Document progress, praise positive behavior and goal completion. Yes. It is so important to provide affirmation, praise, and validation when someone is actively working towards their goal. We might be the first people in their lives that are really providing them with this kind of feedback, and what a really incredible thing. Explain the steps and ensure that they know you are with them every step of the way. Yeah, we're alongside this person in their journey, and we're here to support them in making this change that might be really uncomfortable. Because ultimately, people want to be their best self, and people already inherently have what they need to be their best self. And so we often encourage you to reflect on, a change that you might be unsure of or are ambivalent about making. So maybe taking a moment to think about that. What are some of those, if you feel comfortable sharing again, this could just be a self-reflection, but some of those changes that you're unsure or ambivalent about making. What are some of those things? Yes, fear to the unknown. There's a lot of fear associated with uncertainty and things that we are not aware of or don't have enough information on or is out of our control. And so again, encouraging you to reflect on some of those changes that you might feel stuck with or you might be struggling with making, or maybe taking that step forward because it can be, yes, Jennifer, really difficult to move out of your comfort zone. I think we're, yeah, on the same page, exploring a new position or environment. Yeah, it can be uncomfortable to be uncomfortable. And so we want to keep in mind some of those things. And oftentimes we like to think about, we don't want to ask ourselves, like, why isn't this person motivated? I can see that they really need to do this, X, Y, and Z. But instead asking, like, for what is this person motivated? Is there something that this person um, wants to achieve out of making this change? For example, I often share, someone who is actively perhaps working on reducing their substance use of whatever kind of substance. And maybe this person also has a long-term goal of being able to spend time with their grandchild. And so maybe this person is, receiving some feedback from their primary care provider, or knowing that if this person continues on this journey and is really struggling with substance use, maybe it won't be possible for them to spend time with their granddaughter. So again, exploring what is this person motivated for? And oftentimes it's, what does this person have to give up to get there? So to provide some examples of what motivational strategies look like, we've mentioned those in the chat already, but we want to explore ambivalence. So when someone is uncertain, unsure, feeling some confusion about what's to come, we want to explore their ambivalence through open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summarizing. Is anyone familiar with this acronym ORS? I heard it maybe once or twice in the chat already. Is this an acronym that you're familiar with? Great, okay. Excellent. Yes, another skill. And if not, no worries. So ORS is really foundational when it comes to motivational interviewing strategies to do some of the things that you're probably all already doing. So I will ask you all, how might you ask an open-ended question? Let's say you're working with someone who is uncertain. Actually, let me do this. You're working with someone who just started their new job. How might you ask them an open-ended question? They just started their new job. Today was their first day, and you're meeting with them after their first day of work. How can you ask a question about their job in an open-ended format? Oh, we're experts. Yeah. What did you like about your first day? Tell me about your new job. How's it going? How'd your day go? How are you feeling? Tell me what your job entails. Yeah, so we're looking for more information. We're asking an open-ended question that sometimes starts with, tell me more about, or how, or what. Yeah, what is your favorite part of your new job so far? So we want to ask again in that format. Tell me more about how, what. I often try to avoid why questions because sometimes they come off a little bit like an interrogation, or puts the person on the defense, depending on your tone, of course. But those questions really open the door for conversation. It allows this person to share more. And even if we use that format, ooh, paint me a picture of. Love that. Yes, I love a painted picture. Really sets the scene for what happened. How did you feel about your first day? Great. So we can even, again, ask using the right format, the tell me or how or what, and this person might still give us a one-word answer. And then you'll say, Crystal, you told me to use this format. Why didn't it work? Well, sometimes a lot of that really is being able to have a relationship with this person. And maybe you might need another open-ended question, or maybe you need to continue building that relationship because you know this person best, and you know how to really engage them in conversation. But using some of those formats, again, facilitate more of a dialogue and allow this person to share about their day rather than just, it was fine, it was good, yes, no. Whereas close-ended questions can be helpful, but typically only come with a response of a yes or no. I don't know, I'm not sure. Yes, absolutely. Help them find the words to articulate. Yeah. We're exploring a little bit further. We want to kind of continue to engage in this conversation. And again, there are some times where we'll need a close-ended question, especially, I mean, if you think about kind of basic demographic information, you might not say, if you're looking for the name of someone's street or their address, you might not ask, like, tell me a little bit more about the name of the street that you live on. You would just ask, like, what is the name of the street that you live on? Or what is your address? So sometimes those closed-ended questions are important, but we want to keep in mind using open-ended questions to really facilitate this dialogue. And yeah, sometimes they need time to process, so don't give up. Follow up again, absolutely. We also encourage not asking too many questions in a row. So like sticking with one question at a time to allow this person some space to, as you mentioned, process, think, sit with, digest the information that you're sharing with them, because we don't want this to come off as like an interrogation. We are here gathering information and learning about this person's story and experiences. It can be helpful to do one question at a time. And Heather says, sometimes saying you started your new job today, we'll let them drive the pace, the tone, and whether things are good or not as good. Starting a new job is exhausting, and sometimes talking about it is overwhelming. Yes. And so maybe that's where some of these other pieces come in. So we talked a little bit about open-ended questions. When we're looking at affirmations, we want to be behaviorally specific. So affirming something that went well for this person, that was positive for them, that was a success for them, maybe beyond good job. And again, there's a time and a place for any kind of response. And also sometimes it can be helpful to really clearly reinforce what this person did. So instead of saying, like good job or nice job, that might look like, I really loved how you were able to get to work on time today and you successfully followed that bus route. Or I really love the way that you put your clothes together for your workday today. And so being a little bit more specific. With reflections, the same thing. So when we think about ors and the R of ors, we're looking at reflections. And so sometimes that might look like using the format of it sounds like, or what I'm hearing is, or what you're saying is. And what we do here is really try our best not to parrot or repeat back or mirror what this person's saying. Because of course you don't want this person to say, yes, I just said that. You really want this person to say, wow, that's exactly what I meant. You're really understanding me. And so that can help with some of this non-judgmental approach to really support this person and really build this collaborative relationship. The last part is summarizing. So when we think about our interactions, sometimes we want to summarize either in the beginning, maybe from our last appointment with them. Maybe we want to summarize in the middle to transition a conversation, or maybe we want to summarize at the end to really wrap up. We maybe have another appointment that we need to get to, and we want to be mindful of our time and this person's time. Or perhaps again, it's the end of the day, it's the end of the session or time spent with this person. We also, of course, want to be mindful that we're not like rushing this person out, but it can be a great way to summarize what was said. Does anyone, and I'm getting ahead of myself with this too, but does anyone do what might be called concurrent documentation, or you're documenting alongside this person, or collaborative documentation where you sit side by side and you talk about all the things that happened in your appointment or meeting today, and then you write the note? Does anyone do that at your agency or organization? Yes. Seen a couple yeses. And some people maybe, again, it's not necessarily a requirement. Some agencies do require this kind of concurrent or collaborative documentation. Some people find it helpful, some people not so much. Maybe it distracts the conversation. Not with them, but I will note take. Yeah. Sabrina, I'm so with you. I have 100 different pieces of paper and sticky notes on my desk currently. If I don't write something, I will forget it, and that's just the way my brain works. So sometimes I like to, preface with or ask for permission, like, would it be okay if I if I take some notes? What you're saying is really important, and I want to make sure I'm not missing any details that you're sharing with me. I so get it. Yeah, I really do. Okay, so to summarize our kind of exploration of what it means to explore ambivalence, we can do that through the use of open-ended questions. We can provide affirmations to really reinforce a person's behavior. We can reflect back what they're saying to kind of keep the conversation moving and allow them to share more. And we can summarize at any point to make sure that we're hearing them correctly. That might look like, did I get that right? Or am I hearing you correctly? Or does that sound about what you were saying? Does that sound about right? And sometimes a person will tell you like, no, Crystal, you've got it all wrong. That's not what I meant at all. So we want to be mindful of making sure that we're understanding this person clearly. Another way to explore ambivalence is that pros and cons, and specifically through the use of a decisional balance. And I think I mentioned this with you all if you were here for session 3. When we talked about stages of change, I briefly brought up the decisional balance worksheet, and we'll share some of those resources with you. There's so many different variations online if you look up decisional balance or payoff matrix. Has anyone used the decisional balance or payoff matrix? Have not. Okay. So we'll share that resource with you as well. If you haven't used it, essentially what it looks like is a box with 4 different empty slots that help someone to explore. Yes, it's so driven by them, absolutely. Help someone to explore their own ambivalence about a change. And so we like to ask, maybe we can share this with you all, but again, visualize a box and helping this person to explore the pros and cons. And that might look like, okay, what are the good things about this behavior? What do you like about fill in the blank of this behavior? What do you like about drinking alcohol? What do you like about um, being unemployed? What do you like about whatever that behavior is? What do you like about not having any friends? What do you like about staying home? And so helping this person to explore, maybe for the first time, what does this person actually like about this behavior? Because there's something that this person is doing for a reason, whether it's through survival, whether it's coping, whether it's to navigate some of their own distress. It can be helpful to ask, what are some of the good things? What do you like about this behavior? And then asking, what are some of the not so good things? What do you not like about this behavior? And then it's asking, what are some of the not so good things about changing this behavior? Or what's difficult about changing this behavior? What's difficult about stopping or cutting down this substance? What makes it hard to do that? And then you want to end up with the last question with what are some of the good things about changing this behavior? What are some of the good things about reducing your substance use? What are some of the good things about getting out of your house? What are some of the good things about being employed? What are some of the good things about, again, fill in the blank with whatever that behavior might be? Because again, is it Andrea or Andrea says, correct me which one, it's great because it is very much driven by this person. So this person will tell you exactly what they like about their behavior, what they don't like, what makes it difficult to change, what is kind of keeping them stuck, why are they engaging in this? And so really, again, helping this person to further expand and explore their own beliefs about their ambivalence of change. So let's say you're working with an FCS client about preparing for an apartment interview, and they're expressing some ambivalence to you. They're uncertain. They've got this upcoming apartment interview. What is an open-ended question you might ask them? And if not, an apartment interview, think about any upcoming interview. A person's feeling ambivalent, uncertain. A quiet yes. What about the interview is intimidating to you? Maybe this person now has a list of reasons of, what's getting in the way or what's making them feel uncertain. Is there anything that you need to prep? Yeah, maybe exploring like, what can I do to help you with? How can we make you feel more comfortable in preparing for this interview? What do you need to feel successful? What might it look like to successfully get through this interview? Are you excited for the interview? Yeah, maybe let's see how we can make that more open-ended because this person might say, yes, no, and kind of end there. So maybe exploring like, how are you feeling about the upcoming interview? How do you feel about getting your own apartment? Yeah. Maybe what are some of those questions or concerns that you have? Why is working to get this apartment important to you? Yeah, really relying on what is this person's motivation to make this happen? Excellent. Okay, loving all these questions. So again, so many different ways to ask, and you will notice when you get a response, what or how that question landed. Love that. What would it take to feel less overwhelming? Maybe this person says, well, I'm just really worried about, getting to the interview, or I'm feeling really nervous of how to answer questions. I'm not really confident in my ability to answer questions. And so you'll kind of get a sense of, what this person needs. We might not be sure why they're ambivalent. We might not fully know what's holding them back. And so, yeah, have you ever had something like that before that then worked out? What was it? Exactly. Was there ever a time where you felt uncertain or worried or nervous or anxious? And how did you get through that? How can I support you? Amazing. Yes. Why is this area appealing to you? Is it appealing? And maybe, yeah, absolutely exploring further. Like, what about this apartment is appealing to you? What do you like about this area? So many different variations. And again, I really just want to reiterate, like, you are working with someone and you know this person best, and really allowing this person to share their narrative and their story with you as they're the expert of their lives and they know what's happening for them. And we're here to support them alongside to really make those changes possible. Amazing. Okay. So again, we will share some of these resources with you, but we do encourage you to use some of these open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summarizing throughout some of your conversations with someone. Because again, this really facilitates that non-judgmental, open, and supportive dialogue. And then if someone's ambivalent, really, one of the best skills that you can support and further explore is that decisional balance worksheet. Again, sometimes called a payoff matrix, to explore some of those pros and cons of making a change and pros and cons of not making that change, or the pros and cons of staying the same. And again, starting with the good things about that behavior that they're currently doing, and then ending with the good things about changing that behavior. All right, amazing. One of our final skills that we're talking about are cognitive behavioral techniques. What do you know about generally cognitive behavioral techniques? What is the goal of using these techniques? Yes, reframe thinking and teach skills. How we think influences our behaviors, and we can challenge negative thinking. Yes, absolutely. There's really this connection between our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And we know that if we can recognize or have some insight and awareness into our thoughts, that might shift and change our feelings, and that might shift and change our behaviors. I was just at a presentation the other day. It was like a month ago. But I've been really, really loving what was shared. It was in the context of knowing and acknowledging, some of the stories that people often tell themselves, whether about themselves, whether about a situation. And this person said, notice the story that you're telling yourself and then check in on your emotional state. Like, how are your feelings influencing this story that you're telling about yourself or the meaning that you're making about this story? And so I thought that was pretty cool. But I digress. So when we talk about cognitive behavioral therapy and specifically some of those techniques, we talk about supporting someone in modifying, changing, or yes, becoming aware of some of those thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and helping them to restructure and challenge their own thoughts. And so that can be so helpful, especially if someone that you're working with and you're noticing that they have maybe a lot of self-critical thought and you're kind of hearing them verbalize these things to you. Yes, Melanie says, help people become more aware of those negative interpretations and their behavioral patterns that reinforce distorted thinking. And it can be so hard because what we really want to emphasize here is that, everyone has hundreds of thousands of thoughts that happen throughout the days and weeks. And so we want to acknowledge and in some ways validate their thinking because in some ways it has helped them survive this way. And maybe they're struggling with the awareness of like how those thoughts are impacting their behavior. So that's where we really can come in. What are some of those maybe self-critical thoughts that you hear from individuals that you're working with that maybe get in the way of change? Some of those statements that they might make about themselves, the beliefs that they have about change. What are those? Yes. I can't control what happens. I can't. I don't deserve this or anything else. Yeah. There's nothing I can do about it. Nothing ever works out for me. I can't do anything right. I don't feel worthy. Yeah, kind of this hopelessness. Yeah, some feel it's too late to change. I've kind of been living the way I've been living all my life. That's how I like to live. It's gotten me this far, and there's no use in changing it. Others have it worse than me. Other people need it more. Yeah. Kind of this like, I'm not deserving of this. I'm not worthy of this. I'm not good enough. Why bother? I won't get it anyway. I'll never be able to do this. I won't be successful. Absolutely. And so there are so many of those thoughts that are ultimately unhelpful and unproductive and perhaps maladaptive. Pure fear. You can't miss something you've never had. Yeah. How powerful. It hasn't worked out for me before. Why would that change now? Yeah, this really like deep-seated hopelessness in the possibility of change. And I keep getting ahead of myself here, but thinking again about some of those unproductive or unhelpful thoughts, we've shared some of them, and this likely comes up quite often for someone who might be applying for an apartment, who is thinking about independent living, who's working on being able to live on their own. What are some of those thoughts that you hear? Failure, yeah, I can't do this. I won't ever be able to live on my own. Yeah, I'm going to get rejected again. My client says I'm screwed. Yeah, maybe I can't pass a background check. And that means that I won't be able to get this apartment, or I'll never be able to live on my own. Andrew, yes, they focus on the negative stories they've heard, maybe not the positive experiences. And so it's much easier to focus on the negative or the things that perhaps make them comfortable rather than things that might make them uncomfortable. The idea of making a new change is uncomfortable, and the idea of starting something fresh is uncomfortable. And the thought of not having you there for support is uncomfortable. Noah says, I'm not going to trial. It'll just hurt when I fail. Yeah, so it's almost, I mean, it's protective in nature. This person has a part of them that's protecting them from rejection, protecting them from failure, protecting them from disappointment. So it makes sense that it's easier to stay comfortable and just continue with the status quo than it is to try something new or do something different. Self-sabotage, yeah. And even exploring like what that really looks like. What does it mean to, stay the same? What does it mean to continue on the path that you're living? What does it mean to, again, fill in that blank? Koi says roadblocks can become detrimental when seen as a reason to quit rather than a reason to overcome. Yeah. And it can be so helpful to support someone in kind of creating almost like a change plan when they're ready and kind of in this action stage. And rather than kind of shaming or making them feel upset that something got in the way and it's becoming a barrier, really exploring like how can we approach this situation differently? We've got this roadblock, we've got something that's getting in the way and it's making it difficult. What do we need to feel successful? How can we approach this differently next time? So many different ways to have that conversation. And also, again, validating this person like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that you're feeling this right now because maybe you've had a history of something similar happening, or maybe you know someone and they weren't able to get their apartment, or maybe you knew someone who moved out of this agency and organization and they're not doing too well right now. And so it makes sense that you're feeling really worried and scared about what's to come. So to support someone in some of those, again, exploring and challenging and recognizing those thoughts, we want to provide you with some tangible tools. So if we're thinking about, examples of cognitive behavioral techniques, and specifically with supporting a client who might have a goal, let's say they have a strong focus on wanting to take their medication every day. They know that it's something that's keeping them from rehospitalization. What are some skills that you might teach or support them with to make sure that this does happen? And it doesn't have to be cognitive behavioral, just thinking generally for the moment. Decisional balance worksheet. Yeah, so if someone is ambivalent, absolutely pulling that out. Let's say someone's already ready. They want to do this. They know that they can do this. I see medication organization, alarm setting on watch or phone. Absolutely. Helping set up reminders, whether visual or by an alarm. Practicing how to use alerts and calendar events on a client's phone. Getting a pill box and start a habit of filling the box on the client's chosen day and time. Daily pill box, check off on a calendar. Whiteboard so they can mark it off. I'm a big fan of a whiteboard. Sticky note, something like visual to remind. Absolutely. And you, again, know this person's learning style best. Are they a visual learner? Are they More of a hands-on learner? Are they an auditory learner? Do they prefer, as many of you mentioned, like the sound of an alarm going off reminds them to take their medication? Incentivize using a reward system for them to fulfill at the end of each week, taking it every day. Yes. And that is so helpful to really ensure change happens. So if someone's working towards a larger goal, this can look and be really important for them. So think about, especially for kids or working with children and adults who have autism or autistic, it can be helpful to use that kind of token economy system, it's called, or a reward system, almost like a sticker chart. If this person takes their medication, let's say every day of the week, at the end of that week, that means whatever that reward is, whatever they would like as far as their own kind of prize, they're able to allow themselves to have access to that. Or maybe you're allowed to, or you're encouraging, if you're able to do all these things, maybe we get to, I don't know, go out into the community and get a cup of coffee together. Something that really rewards their behavior that's enticing to them. See other examples, help them to understand more specifically what their meds are for. Yeah, so this psychoeducation piece, talk about where their current daily task and what would change if they add that medication routine. Kim, genius. Love that. One of my clients decided to tape their medication bags to the whiteboard. Perfect visual reminder. Jennifer, challenges sorted thoughts and develop helpful alternatives. It's too much trouble to take this every day. Reframe the thought to taking 10 seconds now prevents bigger problems later. Yeah, you're someone who, wants to make sure that you stay out of the hospital. And so maybe that means spending a few seconds now to take this medication will help you achieve that goal of yours. I think it's Alyssa says there are phone apps that give you points and cute animal pictures and stuff for checking off tasks. Yes, I actually had a client who shared the app Finch. It's a little bird that I actually haven't downloaded it, but she described it. This little bird, like you feed it and it gives you reinforcements if you're able to check off your daily tasks. Jennifer says, pair it with an existing routine. Absolutely. So that's exactly what we're about to cover with this first one. The first part of making sure that someone is able to achieve this goal specifically or any other goal is behavior tailoring. And so behavior tailoring is really all about changing their routine, but also adapting it within their environment. So this could look like alarms, but it also could look like, again, literally think of the word tailoring, like aligning their environment with this new piece of the medication. So for example, let's say every morning I wake up, I turn on my coffee, I, put my toast in the toaster, however that looks. Maybe every morning when I'm getting my coffee, I will put the pill box next to that because I know every day I get coffee. So maybe it's a reminder for me. Or maybe every day I'm grabbing something out of my refrigerator. So I'm going to put a sticky note on my refrigerator to remind me, kind of serve as this visual cue within my environment through my current routine. Take your medication. And again, acknowledging that sometimes there are things that happen. I might see a sticky note and actually not see it. One of those things where like we're just moving so fast. So this does require a little bit of mindfulness. Kim says there are locked medication dispensers that alarm on your smartwatch or phone or on the machine itself and unlocks that section of the lockbox. That is really cool. See, technology is amazing. It just amazes you every day. So there's so many different ways and checking with, what makes the most sense for this person. Because maybe for us, maybe it works if we have sticky notes, but maybe for them, sticky notes not enough. So they need this kind of auditory cue. Or maybe they do need their pillbox next to their toothbrush in the morning. Or maybe they do need a combination of the visual and the auditory, an alarm, anything that really supports this person in making this change. Right. The other example of a cognitive behavioral technique that we want to talk about is cognitive restructuring. Is anyone familiar with cognitive restructuring? I have a feeling that some of us who've already described our understanding of cognitive behavioral techniques might be familiar. And yeah, might not be familiar, but you might know the practice. Yes. Okay. So when we look at cognitive restructuring, what we're doing is supporting and helping this person who may perhaps have unhelpful thoughts, feelings, unproductive thoughts or feelings or fears about taking their medication. And we want to do this by supporting them with a skill that's called Catch It, Check It, Change It. And we'll share this resource with you as well. So the Catch It, Check It, Change It skill really allows this person to develop their own insight and awareness. And yes, that Jennifer, I had a feeling that the way that many of us were describing the reframing is exactly this. So it's the catch it, check it, change it. So think about this as the 3 C's. So this 3-part process that helps this person not only challenge or address and identify their thoughts and feelings related to taking medication, but it could literally be for any goal. So with Catch It, we want to help this person like take a moment to pause, understand, bring some awareness, have some insight into what this thought is. And maybe you're hearing it quite often. Maybe you're hearing this person say, I can never do X, Y, and Z, or nothing ever works out for me. And so maybe noticing and labeling that, like I'm noticing that you often say and fill in the blank with that statement. I'm wondering if you notice that too. And so this is really a self-observation phase, like I said, but sometimes it requires us to observe and hear this thought because the person might not have their own awareness just yet. So we want to help them become more aware of those negative self-statements by catching that initial thought. This could be helpful to write it down, maybe encouraging like, let's write that thought down. And anytime a negative thought like that comes up, let's write it on a piece of paper. Let's write it on our phone. If you've got a whiteboard, again, whatever feels right for this person, maybe a voice note, a recording. Maybe they'll save it in a place if they do daily journaling or something like that. But you want to help them to catch that thought and write it down somewhere. Save it in a place where they're able to reflect on it. And so, again, this requires the awareness into vocalizing or having those thoughts. And we know that that can be quite hard. So if you're hearing those thoughts, encourage you to catch that thought for this person and ask if they've noticed that. The next, yes, Jennifer says automatic thoughts often pop up quickly and feel like truth. Catching them takes mindfulness and practice. Yeah. And there's so many different, sometimes we encourage affirmations like, now I'm blanking on my affirmations around having thoughts, but maybe thoughts acknowledging that feelings aren't facts. And maybe we're having this feeling or we're having this thought, and we want to explore with this person if it's really true. So that's where the checking part comes in. So we've done step 1, we're catching what that thought is. Step 2 is checking that thought or check it. So this could be helpful to explore questions like, is this a credible thought? Is this a true thought? Sometimes I like to ask, like, is your mood affecting the way that you're thinking? So what I shared with before of noticing your story or the story you're telling about yourself and checking in on your emotional state. Like, is your mood affecting the way that you're thinking about this situation? Is it really true? Do you have evidence to back up that thought? Would other people interpret things in the same way? And so helping this person to check maybe with a variety of different questions If you're someone who perhaps uses like some dialectical behavior therapy techniques, this might look like, are you thinking wisely? Are you accessing your wise mind? But again, whatever feels right for this person to help check that thought and then take some time to reflect on it. Yeah, what about the time you handled this situation last week? What happened then? Yes. And so some of that exploration is so important to then change that thought. So we caught that thought, we're checking that thought, and now we are going to change it. So asking this person, what is a more accurate or helpful thought? Maybe exploring again, like, is this how you might talk to a close friend or a loved one? Or if they've got a pet, would you talk to your cat, your dog, your pet that way? How would you talk to someone who is experiencing something similar? What are some other ways that we help to support this person in changing their thought? So we've come up with, and I've shared a few different questions. What are some other questions that you might ask to help challenge and change this person's thinking? Maybe I've taken them all out of your brain right now. And maybe those are many of the questions that we've already been able to come up with, we've shared out loud. Yes, what is the evidence for and against that thought? Let's draw into gentle account of previous successes and failures. Yeah. And many of you have shared some of those questions too, like what happened last time? How were you able to get through that? It sounds like you were in a really similar situation, let's say 6 months ago or last year. You were facing something really similar and you were able to get through that. How did you do that? Jennifer, I see. Is this true? Are there exceptions? Is there another way to look at the situation? Sabrina is guiding them out of using absolutes. Yes, which is really that all or nothing, black and white thinking. And really, again, this requires us noticing that this person has some of these thoughts that could be potentially distorted. There's also, again, a whole list of cognitive distortions that you can provide some psychoeducation on. Ask if this is what's happening for them. Validating that these thoughts must be really distressing. Again, these thoughts happen for a reason, and it's not as simple as changing the thought in that moment. So it does take a lot of practice and effort and energy to become so aware of those thoughts coming up, asking yourself and kind of almost engaging in this internal dialogue of like, is this thought really true? Am I hungry? Or did I not get enough sleep last night? Maybe that's why I'm thinking this way. Am I feeling really overwhelmed with work and I'm just having a hard time thinking clearly? I often think of, like, was I hungry, angry, lonely, tired, bored, scared? All of those really intense feelings that might impact the way that we're feeling. Rose, yeah, tell me about an experience or time in your life when you felt differently. And maybe when things did go well. And what was that like? How did you get there? You've been successful before. How were you able to do that? And that's why it's so helpful when we're talking about reinforcement and affirmations. We want to reinforce behaviors and we also want to explore like how are you able to do that? What a really incredible thing. And not to like diminish or chastise, but to ask like, that's such a cool thing. How are you able to get there? How are you able to do that? Last week you mentioned this was really difficult and it's really incredible to see how much progress you've made. How are you able to make that change? Raquel says, I love brainstorming with clients when they're struggling. Yeah, it's such a fun process. It really allows for further exploration. So getting back to our behavior tailoring. So we've talked a little bit about behavior tailoring, which means adapting the environment or adding something into their current routine. We've also talked a little bit about cognitive restructuring through only one of the skills. There's so many. The 3 C's, so the catch it, check it, and change it. But our question is for a client who wants to shower daily, what's an example of behavior tailoring that you can do? Or, I mean, I'll say both. If someone wants to shower daily, how might you support behavior tailoring or cognitive restructuring? Either of those. What could you do? Yeah, set an alarm to take a shower. I have about 400 alarms on my phone. There's an alarm for everything. So yeah, maybe adding another alarm into their routine. Any other ideas? Yeah, Sabrina says, talk about morning or night. What works best? Some people prefer waking up early and showering. Some people prefer showering before they go to bed, kind of getting ready for the evening. And so everyone's got their own individual preferences. There's no, right or wrong way or time to shower. But sometimes it can be a quite difficult conversation. Shannon says we put up a note as a reminder. That's great. McCoy says schedule it into the daily routine. My oldest daughter has autism, and to get her to shower, we created a structure to when she expects to shower every night after dinner. Yeah, so we've built it into this structure or schedule. Maybe someone's going throughout their day and kind of checking off their tasks. Now they're on the point of shower. Then they check off the shower. Ooh, I like that. Talk about ways to make it a nicer experience, maybe a more enjoyable experience. That might include new scented soaps, lotions, if this person has access to some of those things. Understand the barriers. Start where they are, link to an existing routine. Make the behavior smaller and less intimidating. Just rinse off. Soap and hair washing can come later. Make it appealing. Use a favorite scented body wash. Play calming music. Okay, absolutely love all these ideas. Yes. Making it more, again, think about our SMART framework. This also applies when we're trying to teach a new skill. We might have to break it down. What might it be like to stand in the shower for 1 minute? What might it be like to up that to 5 minutes tomorrow or next week? And let's practice. Let's make this more enjoyable. Prompting by putting the towel and washcloth out so they see it. Yeah, so maybe this is a visual cue reminder of, okay, I've got my towel out. That means that I need to shower. I do also love, again, all the suggestions around like making the environment more conducive or appealing or enjoyable. Of course, there's so many different reasons that someone may struggle with showering daily. So being mindful of that and, adapting some of your skills and teachable skills to this person's needs. Yeah, let's make it easy and doable. What time of day feels most natural? What part of your routine could it fit into, even if it's just a 3-minute shower to start? Absolutely. Yeah, and absolutely do appreciate all these ideas. Very creative. Maybe this person, I don't know, some um, units don't allow candles, but love a good candle before the shower. Maybe some people like the lights dimmed a little bit. Maybe some people, like to have, again, like we mentioned, some scented lotions or washes, scrubs. And Teresa, exactly, yes, that's why I was adding the kind of disclaimer. Some people may have trauma dealing with water, bath, and showers. So with trauma-informed care, think of possible solutions to best support the individual with completing that task. Yes, absolutely. I mean, think about, especially when you think about even offering like these mini exposures or experiments, that can be really fear-provoking for someone who does have a history of trauma. And it's not as simple as like facing this discomfort in one shot. Yeah, Melanie, I like that suggestion. Run the shower empty for a period of time, for a set length of time, for comfortability of sound. Now we know maybe the way it sounds. We know how maybe the bathroom starts to get a little steamy. We know how that feels. Andrea asks, paint me a picture of what the best shower experience would look like to you. Yeah. What would it mean to feel comfortable and safe taking a shower? What would make it possible for you? What can I do to support you? Love all these suggestions. These are probably some of the most creative ones that we've heard. So really appreciate your feedback. And again, there's always room for exploration. What might work for me might not work for you or for the person you're working with. So just being mindful of that. Amazing. Okay. We're at our break. I know we're getting towards the end of our time. Um, let's just take a quick 2 minutes, maybe stretch your legs, and we'll come back for our last 20 minutes. So coming back at, oh, what's the time difference? 2, 1, 12, 11, 11:07. Take a 2-minute stretch and we'll see you shortly. Okay, so we're going to transition into our final element today, which is illness management and recovery. I know there was another variation of this shared by someone who I think may have left. But let's talk about IMR. Is anyone familiar with IMR? Or have you used the toolkit before? Nope. All right, well, this is new. So illness management recovery, or IMR, really supports individuals in monitoring their own symptoms, which includes having education about what they're experiencing, recognizing symptoms that are coming up, and self-management, which might include relapse prevention or promoting ongoing recovery skills. It might include medication management. And so you'll see some examples here again, this education piece, medication management. It also includes modules on coping with stress, building social support. There's so many other training topics within this toolkit, so we encourage you to check it out through the SAMHSA website. It should still be available to you. So we'll talk a little bit about what these pieces are, and you might actually use some of them just generally, but maybe not in the manualized format. So IMR is very much manualized. It helps you to come into maybe your appointments or meetings with someone and be able to share some information. I know some people really do enjoy worksheets and handouts and having something tangible, but doing what is most accessible for this person. So someone may not like handouts and maybe they like to hear and have a conversation about it. Some people might really love the visual piece. So again, IMR is very much about helping this person gain some education and insight into their current mental health condition, as well as skills to support managing or navigating or living with some of their symptoms. It also, again, includes coping skills, social support, all the things that support someone's recovery and independence. So encourage you to check out that toolkit because it can be provided either in an individual setting or even in a group setting, maybe sharing 1 week we're covering education about this specific diagnosis. The next week we're covering maybe harm reduction. The next week we're covering medication management skills. The next week we're covering coping skills for anxiety. So every week can be different. And some helpful hints when we talk about using the toolkit. We'll share this PowerPoint with you, so don't feel like you need to get everything down. But we want to encourage the focus on engagement. So if you've already Googled your way into finding what this toolkit is, maybe you see several hundred pages of this toolkit. So we encourage doing your best not to go into the next meeting and bring every single handout you've just received and said, oh my gosh, look what I just learned this week. And I wanted to share this with you. We encourage avoiding that heavy use of handouts. Maybe bring one at a time and see where it takes you. And maybe exploring too. I like to use kind of this ask, tell, ask approach. So asking this person or sharing like, would you be open to learning more about your mental health diagnosis? They say yes. You say, okay, now you're going to tell them about it. I found this new toolkit that really provides a lot of information about your mental health diagnosis and your symptoms. And then asking them, like, how do you feel about hearing this information? Asking them, what was it like to hear all this information? So using that ask, tell, ask approach, instead of just dumping information on someone, asking for permission and asking, how did it land for them? You also want to focus on the conversation. So what we're doing is really, again, engaging in some of this modeling, and we're teaching and having teachable moments with some of just our daily interaction. So you can start with modules in any order. It doesn't have to go from front cover to back cover. You can go to a topic that is most relevant to this person. So there's some modules related to coping skills. Maybe this person is looking for that. Maybe this person already has some insight and education into some of their symptoms, and they already know about what they're experiencing. They just need some support in navigating some of their really distressing emotions. So feel free to pull apart different pieces from this toolkit and really, again, have this open conversation, get to know the person and what they might need the most. Our very final skill today is the tell, show, do method. And so we'll, again, share all these handouts with you. You should get them, if not this week, maybe next week at the end of these training series, where you'll be able to access some of these skills. So what is a common skill you write on your individualized service plan, or a common skill that you teach? I know we've talked about this before. We're revisiting and connecting some pieces together. Common skills that you teach. Time management, filling out housing applications. No, we said budgeting before, searching for apartments. Yeah, household budgeting. Great, okay. So when we're supporting someone in any of these skills, it can be helpful to use this tell, show, do method, especially when acquiring a new skill. See, budgeting, stress management, coping, emotion regulation, trigger identification. Yeah, there's so many really great things that we're doing. So when you're teaching someone a new skill, these are some of the steps that you can kind of go through to really make sure that you are clearly outlining the steps of this skill. So the first part is understanding the rationale of this skill. And this can be helpful to explore, like with this person. I'm wondering, what about learning this new skill is important to you? Tell me a little bit about how this new skill can support X, Y, and Z goal. And getting that buy-in from them. So now they're telling us, well, I want to learn how to budget because I hate having no money at the end of the month. Amazing. So let's see what we can do to make sure that you have some extra spending money at the end of the month. We then want to break down those steps. And we'll give an example and also share a skills teaching template with you that can be really great in discussing and breaking down some of these steps. So it's not as simple as like save $5. It requires some more thought and some more intention. The next is showing, or that's specifically done through modeling. So modeling that skill or role playing that skill. So maybe you are, I see some examples like stress management or emotion regulation. maybe you're teaching and modeling how to practice a grounding skill. And so you're demonstrating what that might look like. You're showing them how to do this skill. Maybe you're having this person try this skill on their own, or together you'll do that skill. And then maybe allowing this person to try it on their own and see how it went and how did that go and what happened. We know that not every skill works the first time and not every skill works generally. So being mindful of that and exploring like what happened, what was that like? And so again, once you've modeled and role play, the last part is having this person try the skill on their own. And so this varies from skill to skill. So again, thinking about that example of cooking and using maybe the gas or electric stove in the apartment, maybe you showed this person how to boil a pot of water, and now you're going to ask them to practice this skill on their own. And while they're doing this skill, you're kind of noticing, observing, totally non-judgmental, just watching. And then you're able to provide some positive and constructive feedback while also giving some corrective feedback. So, I love the way that you were able to turn on the gas stove and set it to medium. I noticed that, fill in the blank with whatever they could use some additional support on. And then have them try it on their own. So the last part of this do is, do it yourself. Let's see what happens. What is it like for you to practice boiling a pot of water on your own? What is it like to practice this grounding skill on your own? How did it go? And then next time you see them, exploring exactly what happened. What was difficult? What was successful? What worked? What didn't work? What did you like about practicing that skill? What went well? What didn't go so well? So again, emphasizing this tell, show, do as a way to support someone in really breaking down a skill, modeling the skill, and practicing the skill. And so, for example, when we think about modeling using hand sanitizer or washing your hands, this was something that was happening obviously more frequently during the COVID-19 pandemic. So you might break this down and help this person understand why and when hand cleaning is important. Well, it's important because it prevents illness and disease spread, and it's also important to do this before and after maybe using the bathroom or handling garbage. Maybe you're giving some information about, soap and water might be the preferred method. Maybe you can use hand sanitizer when soap and water is not available. And so you've kind of got this, again, rationale, this buy-in, why it's important. And then you want to break down the steps with them. So it's not as simple as use hand sanitizer. It's not as simple as wash your hands. And so there's so many variations. And so this, I think, was an example, maybe it was from the CDC at the time, but the ways in which this skill is broken down. Apply a coin-sized amount. Well, does this person know what a coin? Like, are we talking a quarter? Are we talking like a dime? How much do we need to put on our hand? Applying the gel, etc. So you're seeing these detailed steps and not so simple as using hand sanitizer. I'll share another example because this reminds me when we think about this skills teaching template, before we get into the example, we want to support someone, again, orienting to this skill. What skill will be taught? What's the rationale? Like, why is it important? Listing those steps of the skill, demonstrating the skill, so you're modeling that skill for them. They're now practicing the skill, and that could be done, in their environment again, in that chosen environment. That could be done through maybe you tell them, I'd love for you to practice this on your own. How do you feel about that? Would you be willing to try this at least one time before the next time we meet next week? And see how that goes. And so we'll share this with you. I know I keep saying that. We'll share this skills teaching template with you as well, because it can be helpful to really break down the steps of a skill. So as we get to the end, I want to very briefly take a moment to break down the steps of a skill. And so we can do this collaboratively together. But let's take a moment to write down the list of steps to brush your teeth. So feel free to just add one step to the chat and we'll kind of build off of each other. What is the first step to brushing your teeth for someone with limited knowledge and experience? What do you do first? Get your toothbrush and toothpaste. Turn on the water. Grab your toothbrush. Locate your toothbrush and toothpaste. Go into the bathroom. Okay. Yeah, so you'll see there's so many different steps. Maybe more specificity. Obtain the toothbrush. What's next? Brush teeth for 2 minutes. Some people say sing happy birthday twice. Say the alphabet twice. Get your toothpaste. Put some toothpaste on the toothbrush. Add toothpaste on the toothbrush. Wet the toothbrush. Put the toothpaste on. Squeeze a pea-sized amount onto the toothbrush. I also wish we were in person for this to demonstrate, because this is so interesting to hear like every different kind of response. Yeah, put the toothbrush in your mouth. Open the toothpaste. Remove the toothpaste cap. Gently massage teeth and gums in small circles. And so immediately I'm seeing like, I know we put the toothpaste and we applied a pea-sized amount of paste, but where do we apply it to? And are we massaging our teeth with our fingers? You know, what is 2 minutes? What is pea-sized? Where is the toothbrush? Is the toothbrush in the bathroom? Which side of the brush are we putting the toothpaste on? Onto the bristles. I know that's funny, but it's true, right? If think about this, I've seen another variation of this of kids in a classroom who gave the steps to their teacher of how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. And the kids say, put the peanut butter jelly on the bread. And she has like a loaf of bread. And so she's spreading it on top of the plastic, or they say, put on the peanut butter and jelly. And she's rolling up her sleeves and she's putting on the peanut butter and jelly on her arms. And so acknowledging how difficult and how specific we might need to be with some of these steps. I'm seeing the last part. Yeah, spitting out the toothpaste, rinsing your mouth with the water, rinsing the toothbrush with water. And that's a great point. With the steps, you can also add pictures if that's helpful for this person. So again, noticing some of the variations in some of these steps. Some people started in the bathroom. They said, go to the bathroom. Some people, we don't know where they were and they've somehow found their toothbrush. And some people maybe started at the sink. And some people wet their toothbrush. Some people don't. Some people somehow put the toothbrush somewhere on the toothbrush. Some people maybe through the details or maybe limited details were using their fingers to brush their teeth. So being mindful of some of these steps and appreciate your engagement with this. I'll pause here just to recognize that there again are so many variations in these steps. And I know that this was a very brief example. Usually we spend more time and compare to each other. But what was it like kind of noticing the differences? Yeah, don't forget to brush your tongue and the roof of your mouth. Some people don't do that. Some people don't brush the tongue. Some people also do tongue scraping. Some people prefer a different kind of toothpaste. Some people floss also. Some people also, what else? Use mouthwash. What was it like noticing the variety in steps throughout the chat? Close the toothpaste and put it away somewhere, maybe in the fridge. Thank goodness for ChatGPT for a detailed prompt for brushing your teeth for the first time. Yes, maybe there's so many different ways to access like a very detailed list. Rinse the sink, no loogies. Yeah. Oh, my partner leaves toothpaste in the sink. Oh boy, does that drive me nuts. Okay. So I wanted to then share again, so many different ways to brush your teeth. So Colgate tells us these 5 steps. Another website tells us these 9 steps. Yes. So start with the outer, like tilt your brush at a 45-degree angle. Okay. What I mean, what is 45 degrees? But like which way? With your head straight. And so it's just so interesting to know even a toothpaste company has a different way of brushing your teeth than maybe another website or another source. And we all brush our teeth differently. Clean the chewing surfaces of your teeth. Sometimes this still surprises me looking at some of these. Work in a clockwise direction. Does this person know what clockwise means? Do they know what small circles means? Do they know, you know, what these details mean? So again, I digress, but acknowledging the variations in some of this. Kim, yeah, do you have sensitive teeth? Do you need soft, medium, or hard bristles? Yeah, maybe are you someone who, wants to practice some teeth whitening and you specifically search out a teeth whitening toothpaste. Or maybe there's a flavored toothpaste that you really enjoy and makes it easier to brush your teeth in the morning. Do you brush your teeth once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day after meals? So yes, again, so many different variations to this. Wanted to take a moment to just acknowledge that it's not as simple as telling someone to brush their teeth and practice teeth brushing. It does require this breakdown of this skill. And this is, again, for any skill. So when skills teaching, we want you to remember some of these things. It's hard to break down overlearned skills. So we just noticed here, brushing your teeth might feel automatic, and we might require a little more detail in teaching this skill or demonstrating this skill. How you perform that skill depends on the context. So, are you practicing using or turning on a shower at home? Are you practicing turning on a shower at a friend's or a neighbor's or the hotel? It's important to know like what supplies this person has. If you start to create this list of skills and they don't even have a toothbrush, well, we've got to rewind a little bit. Now we need to figure out the steps to get this toothbrush. And everyone does things differently. We just noticed throughout the chat. So it's important to provide a breakdown of steps for this person that you're working with to keep so that they can refer back to this and stay consistent when you're teaching. So you want to be, able to provide this written list, or maybe you want to write it on a whiteboard, or you want to print out a handout with pictures for them. So just making sure that you're consistent in your delivery and that every time this person's practicing this skill, it's done in the same way. So we hope that these variety of skills were helpful for you today. We know that we went through some of them quicker than others, and also acknowledging that there's always an opportunity to practice a new skill, regardless of the person, regardless of the behavior, there's always a skills teaching opportunity. So we wanted to share the evaluation with you all. This is an anonymous evaluation in our last few moments here. Emily, if you would place that in the chat for me, please. And before you go, we want to also share with you our next and final training session of the Golden Thread is on providing and documenting services. So we've talked about all things related and up to this point about goals, objectives, interventions. And now we are going to provide and document those services. So what it means to write those notes, what it means to be able to actually, finish the last step of this golden thread. So we encourage you to take some time to practice. Emily just put that evaluation in the chat. Again, if you could take a moment just to complete that, we would appreciate it. For our final session, we ask that you try using the skills teaching template. And so again, reminding yourself of being able to practice the steps of breaking down a skill, orienting to this skill, being able to help this person find some rationale, have them model, provide them with feedback. And so we will check back in next week for our final session on the 22nd. We will ask what went well, what was challenging. And again, we wanted to thank you for your time, attention, and your participation. Thank you so much for being engaging. As always, it's so fun presenting with you all and sharing the space with you all. We'd like to remind you that the slides and a link to the recording of this session, as well as other resources, will be available in the follow-up email that might come either today or by the end of our training series. Don't forget to check out the Foundational Community Supports newsletter for all things FCS. And if you'd like more information on becoming an FCS provider, feel free to reach out to WellPoint here. And so without further ado, 2 minutes over our time. So thank you all for being here. Eat your vegetables. We will see you soon. Thank you so much and take good care.